I mean, exactly that is the divine and the most beautiful thing about acting for me and films. And the day I will direct, my desire to be in the eye of the storm of extreme preparation and total chaos. and to allow yourself to be brave, to just let go of what you planned and structure and be in what is living right now, what is the truth. And that crispy clear, it's like when life and death meet, when you have no control, but you're totally safe.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Noomi Rapace is an actor. The release of her new movie, Lamb, brought her to New York City, which is where I sat down with her once again to talk about the work. So where were you when this project came around in terms of like what you were looking for? Were you looking for something like this particularly?
Well, okay, where do I start? I was in a place where I was drawn more to, I wanted to go back to art house films and reconnect with that side of myself. And but kind of where I started when I did like Daisy Diamond, Beyond, Baby Call, and also like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, kind of, even though that's more commercial, but like I kind of wanted back into the Scandi, the dark soil of the Scandi, kind of energy. Yeah. But also I was asked to do Border with Ali Abbasi, and I couldn't do it because I was stuck in under the contract, and it was one of the producers on Border was also one of the producers on Lamb. So when I couldn't do Border, they came back with Lamb a couple of years later. And Valdemar Johansson, the director, flew to London to my house. He brought with him his like a sketchbook.
A lookbook.
Like mood, with sketches, pictures, drawings, a collection of images that was quite disturbing and seductive and beautiful. But it was like the universal lamb, and Ata, the creature, was in there. And the script and a book of Sjón. Sjón is his co-writer, who's an Icelandic poet. And then he gave me this little package, and he went outside on my patio and had a cigarette and left me with this. I was like, wait, what? Is he not going to start like pitching the project? Is like going to try to like catch me and like, but he didn't. He just let me sit there with the material, and I felt like I was lost and found.
Wow.
And it felt immediately, I was like, I've been looking for this. I've been waiting for this. And this is exactly what I need to do.
Wow. So it really did work, like him not having to talk, him letting the images work on you.
Yeah, not chasing me, we're so used to, especially here, as like people pitching, it's like, oh my God, you're so perfect, and and then, and then it gives you very little room to actually feel and to hear your thoughts and to reflect. And Valdemar doesn't use a lot of words. He thinks that lamb has too many words. Can you believe it? So, I mean, that says a lot. And and I think there was no hesitation. I just knew straight away that I needed to do this. And when I came back to Iceland, I go back when I can. I have family there, but it was like the circle kind of. I came back to where it began, and I was 7 when I did my first film, and which was an Icelandic Viking film. I was like a kid in the crowd, but I felt that's where the love for cinema and for acting awoke, and I felt like I married that art form, and I will never divorce. And now I came back to where it started, and it just felt like where I was in my life, because when I came out of Sweden with a Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, I also came out of my divorce. So it was so many changes, and I was quite lost for a couple of years, just like trying to pace my life together, to like find my own rhythm and feel who I was and hear my own voice again. It took quite some time, and I was doing a lot of films that maybe didn't really speak for me, and I always tried to make them mine. But this is more me than most things I've done.
And so, him being a first-time filmmaker, and this being a really delicate kind of thing to pull off, you know, I can imagine this film in less capable hands. It would be almost silly.
Definitely. Yeah.
So
I mean, imagine when I called my team and I said, I'm doing this small Icelandic film. It's about a lamb baby, half lamb, half human. And they're like, wait, what? I was like, the budget is like minus. And it's going to take me out for 6 months. And the director's done 2 short films. Great. Sounds like a good idea.
Is this really just about you following your instincts?
Yeah. I know people around me kind of want to sometimes point out what's good for me to do and strategies and stuff. And I'm very like, I need to love things. Even the most commercial things, I need to fall in love with the material and the character and feel like I can give her my voice and my history, my broken history, so to say. But definitely there's a before and after Lamb. Mm-hmm. For me as a human and for me as an actress.
When you have to enter grief into the work, but I'm assuming you can't play grief, right? How do you enter that in to the work? One of the great things I love about this movie is you don't really know the extent of the grief until well into the movie, but you can feel it from you, particularly. And once that happened, once I was revealed, I was like, oh, now this makes sense. You're carrying it, but how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's actors are quite eager, me included, to show and to be understood. And there's always this great fear that you will lose the audience if you don't allow them in or kind of guide them quick enough, and if you don't give them at least cracks of what's going on. And Maria is so, she's holding back. She's not showing anything. She's not communicating almost at all what's going on in the inside until quite late in the film. And I had to force myself to be truthful to what I knew about grief and what it is to have the amount of pain that you can't show it. Like, it's beyond, you don't have the luxury to let it sip out and bleed out and sweat it out a little bit here and there. It's like, it will kill you. So she's constantly like avoiding the ocean of pain. She's just drinking like spring water instead, and she's not going there. And I can feel that, me as an actress, I made a decision in this one. I'm just going to be truthful to the story and to Maria. And if it works, it works. And I will not fall into the hands of nervous eagerness to please or to be understood. But it was something, it's a really good question, because it was really something I had to go back to a couple of times in the beginning, like the decision of trusting the story and not wanting to, can I just let out a little bit? Like, Ingvar is crying, Ingvar is showing emotions, he's there and she's not. And it's like, how will you relate to her? How will you feel like, how am I gonna let the audience be with me if I'm not with myself? But she's not in her body. She's just surviving. She's not living. And then when Ata is born, slowly that becomes a bridge from that compact, lockdown cocoon of sadness and grief. All of a sudden, Ata becomes this pipeline, or like a bridge that she can start to allow herself to feel and let oxygen into that closed off bubble. And then she makes love again. She dances. She allows life to come back. And then in the end, even though there's this massive shock and pain that happens to her again. You know, she's living. She's back in life.
I like that you just said that, and I don't want to give away in the ending, but that you let out a breath, I think, is the very last thing, right?
Yeah.
And I love talking to actors about important breath moments. Like, you know, sometimes the actor doesn't understand that they're doing it, and I think it's important. It feels like that was really important here, right?
Yeah.
And I could feel that.
You can hear a lot of people, like my mom, when I grew up, she was always, breathing is so important. I remember people's breathing. I know how people breathe. I pay a lot of attention to it. I had a driver on the movie I just did in Torino, and he was breathing so loud on his mask. It was so awkward. And then my mom always had this breathing.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? She's like, what? I was like, what do you mean? You just come, you walk into the kitchen and say, what do you want to say? And she was not aware, and I was so aware. Right. So I think for me, breathing, it really shows where you are in your body. A lot of people breathe up high, it's all up here. Very few people actually breathe down like deep down, like low in your, like all the way down in your pelvis. And I feel like Maria, in the end, that's like the beginning of a new chapter. That breath and that letting that air out, that's the start of a new era, sort of.
Yeah. I was in a movie once, and this guy next to me said, can you, you're breathing too loud. In the movie, like he said, he was affecting his watching of the movie. And my wife was next to me. I said, this guy just, I didn't even like address what he just said because it was so ridiculous. But then since then, I've been noticing that I breathe really loud in the movie. Like I'm in another, maybe I'm like in a trance kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, that's
like,
wonderful.
I keep thinking of this guy.
If you look at kids, like infants, if you look at babies, the breathing.
Yes.
And you know, this is it leads us into one of the most divine moments in Lamb, when we shot Lamb. Do you remember that scene when I'm putting the flower crown on Ada?
Yeah.
And there was a moment, because the lambs were like always doing whatever they wanted. It was quite tricky to shoot with lambs and babies and dogs and cats. And, you know, they were never, collaborating with me. They didn't want to they didn't want to do what they were told at all. But this specific moment, Ata, this lamb just started breathing with me. And she put her face towards mine, and it became this very strange, very clear communication.
Wow.
She was breathing on me, very close to my nose, and I was breathing out, and I could feel how she was taking in my breathing. So it became like a dance of breathing, almost like this stillness. And Valdemar didn't want to cut, because they were all experiences. They were looking at me and this lamb actually communicating through breathing.
Don't make fun of me, but I have pet rats, and me and my wife don't have children, but we call them our children. And
how many?
3. And we say a lot of things that it would be embarrassing for me to tell you about these kids.
Yeah.
So when I came home from Lamb, I felt like I wasn't so weird in a way.
No,
but I'm wondering if you had to go through something like that to play this, because like we were just talking about how it could have been ridiculous, but you had to make me believe that you cared, and that this isn't crazy. And how did you do that?
But I mean, for me, the world is more crazy. People living through Instagram and creating fake personalities with filters, and they're adjusting their faces, and they pretend that there's something they're clearly not. That is more weird for me than having a human baby lamb at your kitchen table. So I mean, the world has always been a bit weird for me, and that lamb is less weird than a lot of things around me. I mean, my best friend when I was a kid was a dog called Krummi, which means it's a nickname for raven. And my horse Eltur, which means fire. And then I had a big black cat called Sultan, that was the three musketeers, and they were always with me.
Wow.
And I spoke to them. They were like, I cried with my horse. I never showed emotions to anyone else until I was like 20. I never cried as a child. I never complained. I just shut it down, and I kept on going. I was extremely stubborn and I was very explosive and very passionate, but bit by bit, I was kind of hiding that lava field of emotions because there was no space for it. It was not allowed to be emotional like that. So I learned to control it, and then the only ones, like my three musketeers, were the only ones, the witnesses.
Yeah.
So putting all your hope and putting your happiness in the hand of a lamb baby, it's not that weird for me. If that's my possibility to happiness, of course I'll grab it.
I read somewhere that the landscape here did something to you, returning to this landscape and experiencing it in this way. And you were just talking about your childhood, and I think you said in the same piece that I read that speaking this language and being there also connected you kind of to your childhood again. And I mean, do you just use that in some way? Is that what I'm experiencing in the movie? You using that somehow, whatever emotional state you're going through because of that? Is that just all part of like the materials you're using here? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it does evoke, I would say that the nature in Iceland is a character. And when I moved to Iceland when I was 4.5, 5, I fell in love with that character. That was like my first boyfriend or girlfriend, That was my first relationship, I would say. And I felt like I belong here. Iceland like the nature of Iceland, the stones, the lava, the colors, the wind, the storms, the smell, they became family members without sounding too weird, and I felt very connected in that. And that was, it's drama, it's dramatic, it's passionate, it's wild. And I miss that part of myself, and I miss those family members. We moved back to Sweden when I was like 8 maybe, and I was devastated. I didn't want to live in Sweden. And I went back to Iceland every summer alone.
Wow.
My family stayed in Sweden. I went back like when I was 10, 11, 12, 13. The day I finished school in Sweden, I flew. And I was in Iceland the whole summer working in greenhouses. My grandmother has she has like big greenhouses, tomatoes and cucumber and horses, and I was working all summers. So for me, I feel like when you see me in Lamb, that is me coming back to where I once found myself.
Yeah.
And it's me belonging to something. And then in the end, when Maria, when she's breathing again, I mean, that is a moment of, I'm back in life. And that's kind of what happened to me.
And how do you prepare for a scene like that last scene, where throughout the whole movie you are withholding, as you're saying, and then here you have to do something that, outwardly, that I have to, as an audience, I have to get. You know what I mean? Like, this is...
Now I invite you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I hope you will accept my invitation, even though it took some time.
Yeah.
I mean, I always feel like I don't plan. I try to fill myself with an emotional and psychological truth, and it's almost like I've been collecting evidence, and now it's time to crack the code. And then I hope that whatever I have in my body and in my bloodstream is enough to just bring me to where I need to be in that exact moment. And I always need to relate to I need to translate something in my own life to that specific scene. So, I mean, what happens there, I have no idea I don't know how long we shot for. I think the camera was rolling for 15 minutes once. It was it was like, and I lost my sense of time, and it was almost like the pain and the shock kind of was rising, and it was like, it was crazy what my body was going through in that moment, but I just let it happen. And so nothing was planned except I was prepared and I was ready to let it out, but I didn't create a road map for myself. Mm-hmm. I was hijacking.
Yeah. I guess that's what you have to do, right? If you create a roadmap, then you're just going to hit points.
Yeah, when you stick to decision that is out, like that is actually expired. Like this bus stop doesn't exist anymore. You're waiting for the bus, but I did look up, I'm gonna take this bus. But it's not coming. But no, I'm not gonna do anything else. I'm sticking to this decision. I mean, we do see actors that have been planning, and they rehearse at home, and they have this is the high point of the scene, and then I'm gonna go down, and this is when I'm gonna break out a little tear, and then if you have that, if you give yourself that kind of roadmap of you plan the scene and you have your emotional curve, of course it's not going to happen, because you don't know what the other actor is going to do. Yeah. So, I mean, unless you kind of just ignore what that person is doing and stick to your own decisions, but then it's not going to be, there's no chemistry in that. So I guess I always just try to fill myself with what I think, what I'm coming from, and what did she live? Not just yesterday. What did she, what happened a year ago? And when did her heart break? When did she become the person we meet in the movie? And when was the last time she danced? When was the last time she ate ice cream? When was she drunk last time? When did she masturbate last time? Just who is she? When did she pause her life?
Yeah.
And how long since she was in church? And when did she speak to a family member last time? It's and then all these little clues will help me in the situation when the unknown hits me. I mean, that is the divine and the most beautiful thing about acting for me and films. And the day I will direct, my desire to be in the eye of the storm of extreme preparation and total chaos. And to allow yourself to be brave, to just let go of what you planned and structure and be in what is living right now, what is the truth. And that crispy clear, it's like when life and death meet, when you have no control, but you're totally safe.
Yes. But I guess that's what a director, it's part of a director. You have to trust the director, right? To feel safe in that way. Is that part of that?
You have to trust the director. You have to trust yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to. I need to. I've worked hard on myself to never let my vanity be my director. To not fall into the trap of self-awareness when I start correcting myself. From the perspective of beauty or wanting to please, or wanting to be liked, or wanting to be understood. Because if I start working for them, if I start correcting and adjusting and just tweaking a little bit, then I'm not in the moment. And then I can't exist the way I want. So, I mean, it's hard. I broke my nose on a movie in January this year.
Whoa.
And I have a scar right between my eyes and double fracture. Really intense. We had to shut down production in 3 weeks and surgery. I have surgery again in December. Yeah. And then it was really interesting because exactly what we speak about now, vanity. What happens when your face gets attacked and destroyed, and then I communicate through my face. My face is my tool. That is what I can show my emotions. They're not show. There's that. This is the window to everything that's going on in me, And I try to not show. I try to be inside it and let it show. And then I've been having many conversations with myself this year about like vanity and beauty and how can you free yourself from all these obstacles and psychological prisons. And that is a great director will help you to put your focus on the right things. A director that says, make her pretty, or like, oh no, you look weird when you do that, or when you scream, your blood, your veins will pop out. Like I wouldn't shout that loud because then you look strange. As soon as someone points out how you look when you do a certain thing, there's emotionally right or correct. Then you will then the fear will hit you, and you will start pulling back and start adjusting. And for me, the great freedom of film and cinema gets lost in that awareness.
On my way down here, I listened to your last episode on the podcast, and you had said that you do all your own stunts. I mean, was this a stunt that? It was
actually, the stunt was supposed to start like later in that scene. This was the calm moment right before the violence.
So you can't.
So I was totally unprotected. I didn't know.
You're not second guessing your decision to do stunts because it didn't happen during a stunt.
No,
right?
Exactly. Just keep doing that.
And it could have happened to anyone then. It could have happened to anyone.
I got the camera in my face.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know why this doesn't happen more.
Yeah. I was acting like really close, looking right into the camera, hiding under a blanket, and the blankets was ripped off, like kind of pulled off violently, and I was supposed to be pulled out of a car, and then the stunt was going to start, the fight scene.
Oh, wow.
And then the blanket had big holes in it for the light to shine through, because the camera was my daughter, so I was talking to her like, be quiet, don't make a sound, because there's soldiers running outside. And then one of the stunt guys, pulled the blanket off, and the camera was stuck in the blanket because one of those like antennas that pops up from the camera was stuck in the blanket. So he just like, the camera just rammed into my face.
Wow.
Double fracture, blood everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of.
I bet you that stopped things for a little bit, huh?
Yeah. Yep. And concussion. And then, that was bad.
Oh my God. The other thing you talked about on that podcast was how you were looking to, I said, is there anything you wanted to do that you haven't done yet? And you said, well, I forget the word you used. You said something like, I'm kooky. I don't think people know that. I want to do something like light, and like my humor is really absurd.
Yeah.
And on the way down there, I was thinking that, well, Lamb didn't satisfy that.
No.
Well, in terms of humor.
No, but I'm getting closer to it. I just came from Austin, Texas last night, and I had 2 movies there, Lamb and The Trip. The Trip is coming out October 12th on Netflix. And The Trip is a dark comedy almost. Yeah, it is. Norwegian. It's like a strange Norwegian. I would say that it has a touch of Tarantino, but in a Norwegian, with the Norwegian colors.
Nice.
So that is kind of, we had, the same director did What Happened to Monday.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a lot of fun shooting that one. It's a couple trying to kill each other, who hate each other deeply. And it's quite funny, actually. And I kind of really enjoy that twisted dark, to be in that, in that environment. Yeah. But I would love to, I love dark comedies. I would love to explore that side of myself more. When I was 12, I had this alter ego, and his name was Gummi, and he spoke like this, and he was for hours. I just spoke in Icelandic, and I was an old man. My alter ego was an old man. His name was Gummi, and I made this ugly face, and I went on for hours, and my friend was like, please stop. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. And it just went on and on and on. So I was a really strange child. I was very uncool. And my friends always says, like, you're so nerdy. Like, your humor is so sick. Like, when will the world ever know, like, how weird you are? So, that is yet to, I would like to spend more time kind of exploring that.
Yeah. Does it literally feel like a part of you that hasn't been able to unfurl entirely?
Yeah.
That's so cool. I look forward to that. Noomi Rapace, thank you so much.
Thank you. This is my favorite moment.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.